Hello and welcome to Cutoff Genes, the podcast that teaches you how to find your truth using nothing but DNA. My name is Julie Dixon Jackson. I'm a genetic genealogist, heretofore known as a Gen Genie.
I'm Renee Colbert, and I am here to ask questions and have Julie break it down in a very simple way.
And I am Richard Castle, a producer and Ersatz engineer, dog wrangler, and I'm also here to, I don't mean dog wrangler of Julie and Renee. I have my dog Buddy is here. And I am also here to provide my Y chromosome.
I
to
love
the
it.
otherwise double X.
I also like, sometimes you got to wrangle us from time to time.
I have nothing to say to any of what just happened, but that was fun. All right. Hey, it's episode 5, y'all.
We're here. We made it.
We made
did it.
So, hey, let's start.
Yes.
Here's a corrections corner from
sure.
last week.
Yep.
It's not really relevant, but it, again, drives me crazy. So last week I told you that your second cousin match on 23andMe was on your mother's side.
Right.
It was, in fact, on your father's mother's side.
Oh, okay. Thank
feel
God
better?
you corrected that. It was churning in my head all week long.
Yeah, I know.
I forgot you had said that, but thank God you clarified.
So I figured out who he is, and I added him to your tree.
Oh, cool.
However, he is one of a line of 4 people with the same name. There's a first, second, third, and fourth.
Oh,
Crazy.
okay.
So now I need to, and I did reach out to him. He has not responded, which is not unusual, but he's in there, so.
Interesting. My mom has taken 23andMe, and she's not coming up. Why is that?
What?
I know. Is her privacy settings?
Maybe.
Okay.
Let's hope.
Because I would love for that to be a scandal, except for the fact that I look, sound, and talk like her. So listen, I'm spending my entire life trying not to be my mother. So I think we're pretty connected.
It must be her settings.
It has to be.
Fingers crossed it's her settings.
All right, I'll swing
Or
back around
not.
with Peggy
I don't know.
and see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about donor-conceived people.
Right.
And the difference between them and me.
Yeah.
Who is a adopted conceived
Which
person.
really kind of, I didn't even consider the 2 different mentalities that you would have.
Sure.
It was really interesting. So to review again, what do you perceive? Well, you are adopted. What do adopted
I don't
kids
perceive,
feel?
I am.
Yes. And then what do you perceive donor kids feel?
So I would say the majority of adoptees have more of a abandonment issue.
Right.
Not all of us, but I think that's more prevalent in the adoption community than the donor-conceived community, simply because the donor-conceived people were literally made from scratch because somebody wanted them so badly. So I found a new blog written by an anonymous person that I actually found yesterday. And it's entitled, Coming Out, this particular chapter is entitled, Coming Out as a Donor-Conceived Person.
Cool.
And he said, I'm assuming it's a he,
Yeah.
welcome to Abandoned by Default. Isn't that an interesting title?
That is very interesting.
Yeah, and he
Okay.
talks about how he was donor conceived. He's known about it since he was 7 years old, after his parents separated.
Okay.
So a lot of this stuff comes out when things fall apart at home,
yeah.
if you didn't, get on that earlier. He said he actively avoided dealing with this part of who he is until he was 33.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And at 33, he got a DNA kit, but didn't take it for a long time because he just wasn't sure what to do with it.
Yeah.
But he knew he could find half-siblings, other close relatives, or a biological father. But there was no way his brain could wrap itself around it. So eventually, he just did it. Like a year and a half later after he bought the kit. And he found out that he had 14 half-siblings.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
That's
okay.
a thing that happens.
Because
And-
the donor donated so much.
Yeah, and again, with sperm donors, I think that's a more likely
It would make
thing
sense.
because, hey,
Right, and pop in once
free
a week.
people.
Right. Yeah.
So, and he finished by saying, although every donor-conceived person's experience is unique, I believe that many of us who feel pain share a core emotion that is hard to put into words. For me, connecting with others in my position has helped me immensely.
That's great.
Yeah.
And is this a blog that your listeners could find?
I believe it is called Abandoned by Default.
Okay.
So,
But
and it was I think it was just written like the day before yesterday, and I happened upon it.
You're on it.
So he's going through some stuff. I also discovered that there is a movie that is about to be released. It's in festivals right now, and the person who made this movie and who is also the subject of this movie, her name is Sarah Lamb.
Okay.
And she is donor conceived. And the movie is called Thank You for Coming.
Oh, Sarah, I'm proud of you. That's good. I know you went around the room. I know you took a lot of suggestions. You landed on the best one. That's fantastic.
It's good. So it follows her journey to her truth.
Okay.
I can't wait to see it. Sarah is going to be at Jamboree in Burbank this week, and I'm going to hunt her down.
Please do.
And they might be having a screening of it.
Julie.
Yeah.
That'll be amazing.
By the way, everything that I'm telling you about Jamboree, it's already happened because this is going to drop next Monday.
Right.
So sorry.
So to review for your listeners, so what is Jamboree? What's this thing you're going to
Jamboree
this weekend?
is the Southern California Genealogical Society's annual extravaganza.
Right.
For DNA, and there's tons of exhibitors there. There's speakers there. There's a whole day for just DNA.
I love it,
which I'm super excited about. And I'm going to go, and I'm not there on an official capacity, but I'll be. If you were there, I was the blonde with the pointy rimmed glasses, handing out cards that said "Cutoff Jeans Podcast."
I was going to say, welcome new listeners. 'Cause
Welcome
you just
new
met a bunch
listeners.
of people this weekend in the future.
Ooh, hey, let us know. Go to the Facebook page and tell us. Cutoff Jeans Podcast on Facebook.
Cutoff's one word. I always get it wrong.
Cut off, one word. Mm-hmm. Then I also spoke to, this is the last part, I spoke to my friend Rose, who is an Australian donor-conceived person.
Okay.
I met her when I was going through my odyssey, and she actually helped me with the mirror trees and kind of pointed me in the right direction. And she had done it herself earlier,
right,
and with less info than I had, actually. So it was pretty amazing. So I asked her a few basic questions.
Okay.
And I'll just give you a quick rundown of her take on this. So she's always known she was donor conceived because she had very progressive parents, but she wasn't interested in her biology.
Okay.
It's interesting she says biology until she was 38.
Huh.
And at 38, she watched a documentary by an Australian rocket scientist named Lauren Burns, who was donor conceived in the 80s. I'm going to watch that as soon as possible.
Yeah,
I'll put a link to it on the Facebook page.
A lot of viewing ahead of you.
So much.
Thank you for coming. What's this one called?
I don't know. That's why I'm going to put it on the Facebook
Smart.
page.
Good. Good.
But it's Lauren Burns who made it.
Okay.
Rocket scientist, everyone.
We'll look it up.
Yep. She's found the story life-affirming, and suddenly she wanted all of her answers.
Cool.
Her parents were always very supportive because I asked her about that. She says her mother felt almost guilty that she had been prepared to bypass all the rights of the child to know their biology in order to get this baby. I found that fascinating.
Sure, yeah, explore that because you're a mom. So
I am a mom.
I am not. I have a dog. I love him. But beyond that, that's as far as I can speak to this. How would you feel as a mom? Like your kids don't know their biology.
I feel that everybody needs to know their biology or has a right, at least. If they don't need to, fine. But everybody has a right to know their biology.
Yeah, I like that.
I think it's as simple as that. So she started her search by going through all the relevant government agencies, hospitals, clinics, and even the treating doctor, and there were no records relating to her mother's artificial insemination.
Interesting.
Why?
Yeah,
why is that a thing? So in 2015, she tested with the three main companies, which are Ancestry, 23andMe, and Family Tree DNA.
Okay.
And the closest match she got were third cousins, and they were unrelated to each other. That's pretty distant.
That is far
Yeah,
apart.
especially with no clues of anything.
Right.
She spent 6 months, 3 hours a night building trees.
Oh,
That speaks to me.
yeah.
Because that happens. In 2016, she finally figured out who her donor was. He was 83, and she wrote him a letter, and he called her 3 days later. And they talked for 2.5 hours. The connection was strong, and they had the same passions. These are the passions: gardening and cake.
Isn't that great? Oh my God, you can't write that. That's fantastic.
Cake. Who has cake passions?
Me?
Cake boss. Fair enough. Fair enough.
I love that. I also love that that's how that came up. Like, what are you into? Well, this is going to sound crazy, but
I
gardening
like
and cake. Me too.
Yep. Who knew? And they were both historians.
Wow.
Which is very important. They corresponded a lot, and he sent her copies of books that he had written.
Come on.
Come on. Unfortunately, she never met the guy.
Okay.
Because he passed away. But it's amazing that she got
Yeah.
this information from him, and he was so forthcoming. I did not get a chance to ask her if she has any half-siblings.
God, this is amazing. It's also curious, as of right now, and I might need your help with this, it's all sperm donors that you've talked to?
So far, yes. I have yet to speak with an egg donor.
Because when did egg donations start? Was it later?
Once again, you asked me a question. There's no possible way I can answer
no way to know.
on the
There's
spot.
no way to know. We couldn't find it. But I'm curious if
Be right back next week.
Egg donor babies are still babies right now. They don't really care. And I think around your 30s, you're like, who am I? Where did I come from?
What was her name? Brown, Sharon Brown. No, it wasn't Sharon Brown. Her last name was Brown. Louise Brown.
Right.
She was the first test tube baby in England in the 80s.
Look at that.
I just pulled that out of nowhere.
You did. Good job.
But now, was she... I think she was conceived by both egg and sperm donation.
Oh, cool. All right.
Or maybe not. Maybe it was her parents' egg and sperm, and they put him in a test tube, and
Right.
Bob's your uncle.
I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you I'm the questions girl. That's what I provide here.
Come on,
is
Renee.
questions.
There have been times when you have pulled me out of a very deep hole just with a simple word that I can't come up with. So, you know.
Great. This is really interesting, though.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I asked her a bit about how she perceived the differences and similarities between donor conceived and adoptees. And she says that being adopted has potential of being a lot more complicated with possible feelings of rejection and not fitting in, which don't necessarily apply to donor conceived. I would agree with that, but again, I'm not donor conceived.
Right.
Some donor conceived people have a terrible experience as a result of finding out they are donor conceived during a family argument.
Oh, no.
I know for a fact that has happened to
Oh,
people.
no.
After their parents die, or just by taking a DNA test. That's probably the biggest thing that happens, the biggest bombshell that is dropped with DNA tests nowadays. So if there's one thing I can tell you, be prepared. Okay, here's one more thing that I just discovered this morning regarding donor-conceived children. And I found this in the Washington Post.
Right.
So a woman says an Ancestry.com DNA test revealed her father to be her parents' fertility doctor.
Oh, boy. Mm-hmm. Oh, boy. Okay.
So here's what happened. She did not know her mother had undergone artificial insemination 36 years ago. That's the first zinger.
yeah,
like,
that's a lot. Okay.
That could have softened that.
Sure.
And her parents didn't know that their doctor used his own sperm.
That's nuts.
So they're suing this guy for fraud and medical negligence, among other things.
Come on.
So she was inseminated with the sperm from her father, from the husband, and it was mixed with donor sperm that they requested the donor be in college, taller than 6 feet, with brown hair and blue eyes.
Okay.
That is super specific. And the doctor told him he had found a donor matching that description. He did not match that description.
Oh, boy.
So he remained the mother's OBGYN for years after, and when they moved from where they were from,
Right.
he cried.
Yeah,
Because
of course
he
did.
knew that he was the father.
Yeah. At some point, we should probably talk about designer babies and what we think about that. Of like,
Yeah.
hey, let's customize your physical traits.
Yeah,
Ugh.
that's something I need to look into. So, yeah, this is fun, and I'm sure that is not the first time that has happened as well, but I thought it was interesting. It just popped up in the Washington
You
Post.
don't think about how much trust is involved with that when you.
So very much trust.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, great work.
Thank you so much. We're taking a break.
Thank you for listening to Cutoff Genes, the new podcast starring Julie Dixon-Jackson with Renee Colvert.
We are back from that break.
Ooh, I missed you.
How you feeling?
I'm good.
Good. Okay, let's take the listener question.
Oh, good. Okay, I love this.
These are fun.
I like them a lot. Yes.
This is from somebody gnomed. She said gnome.
It was nice of you to open up your Facebook group to gnomes.
Gnomes
a lot
are
of people
always
are
welcome.
like, no gnomes.
We're an
and you're
equal
like, you know
opportunity
what? Let 'em
Facebook page.
Right. Good job.
So this gnome is named Carrie Jade Stevenson.
Okay.
And she queried, is it normal to get more matches from one side of your family? I have about 1,000 matches on my mom's side, but only about 10, fourth to fifth cousins only, from my dad's side. I asked Carrie some follow-up questions
good
because
job.
that's not enough information.
All right.
At first, she thought it was an NPE. Mm-hmm. We went over that last week, non-paternal event.
I was just
almost
going to,
forgot
but
it.
go over again what that means.
No problem, everybody. Wasn't that what you said?
Yeah, that was mine.
Yes.
But what's the
A
official term?
non-paternal event is basically misattributed paternity, meaning your father is not who you thought.
Right. Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
But some of the non-maternal matches have her father's last name, which is not a common one. So that's a tell that it's not an NPE. It's not a for sure thing.
Okay.
But anyway, and she said her mom is French-Canadian, and her mom's parents each had 10 siblings.
Wow.
Dad is from England and has only one sibling.
Okay.
She is unsure of his family lines beyond his father, but lore is that his mother was Polish and was in an internment camp during the Holocaust.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Yes. Okay, I have so many answers for this.
Yes. Great.
First of all, the most obvious would be the family size and location. She's got 20 great aunts and or uncles. And if they're all in North America, that makes complete sense because this is where we started doing DNA, started doing ancestry DNA testing. And if she's only tested at Ancestry, a factor may be that if the paternal side is in Europe, she said her father was from England and her grandmother was Polish.
Okay.
And they hadn't tested at Ancestry for obvious reasons. She might want to upload to FTDNA as they have a healthier European database.
Oh, there you go. That's smart.
That's something
good
to
advice.
think about.
Okay.
Also, reach out to some of those paternal matches and ask about their ethnicity. If her paternal grandmother was in a camp, then during the Holocaust, that would imply that she was Jewish.
Right.
That would be telling, particularly if her maternal line is not Jewish. Okay. And the easiest way to tell is if you have Ashkenazi Jewish in your... And I wonder, Carrie, do you have Ashkenazi Jewish in your DNA? Because that would tell you. That would be pretty telling.
Okay.
All right. This could be an NPE on her father's line, possibly his father or his mother's father.
Okay.
If dad is still living, definitely have him test as well as his one sibling. Rule of thumb, always test as many siblings as possible.
While they're here. Yeah.
Yes, please. And the more you have of people on the same generation, but the same line, the easier it is to
Christmas gifts are
hash
going
it
to be
all
so
out.
easy for the next few years.
I know. Also, try the shared matches feature on her paternal matches. The shared matches button is on after you push the view match button. There's 3 buttons. One says pedigree and surnames on the left. On the right, it says map and locations. In the middle, it says shared matches.
Okay. Great.
There, I sent you right there. Keep in mind that if someone is beyond a 4th to 6th cousin and doesn't match any of your higher matches, they may not show up as matches in common, even if they are.
Okay.
So when you push shared matches, it's supposed to, in theory, tell you the people that both of you match that are also in the database. Usually, though, if they're below 4th to 6th cousins and they don't match any of those higher people, they won't show up.
Doesn't make any sense. Okay.
I know.
All right. Okay, good. That was a great question and a great answer. Good work.
I hope that was a great answer. If you have any follow-ups, Carrie, hit me up.
And then if other listeners want to ask you questions, the
Hit me
Facebook
up.
page?
Facebook page or Twitter at Cutoff Jeans Pod.
Great.
Ask me questions. All right, let's go on to the DNA-related phrase of the week.
Yeah, I like this one.
Do you know what the phrase is?
Is it an acronym? Because I won't.
Nope.
Okay. What's
It's
this
something
one?
you've heard me say many times and wishing that you understood what the heck I was talking about.
Okay, let's try it.
It is the illustrious mirror tree.
Oh, yeah. That confuses me every time.
I know.
Okay. What is it?
All right, so a mirror tree is something, first of all, I'm going to tell you, and this is one of the reasons that I talk Ancestry up so much. The only place a mirror tree actually works is on Ancestry because it utilizes the Ancestry software.
Okay.
Meaning the hints.
Right.
The leaf hints.
Shaky leaves.
The shaky leaves.
Yeah. That's also a phrase that I say because I like
'Cause it's
the
fun to
word,
say.
but I don't know what it means.
Shaky
Right.
leaves. Nervous foliage.
Okay, so mirror tree. What is this mirror tree?
A mirror tree is essentially it is a mirror image of somebody else's tree
Okay.
that you attach yourself to.
Got it.
You attach your DNA to. That's
Okay.
it in a nutshell.
Okay.
Let's go outside the nutshell now.
Yes. Okay, thank
or
you.
Or maybe inside
Good.
the nut.
Right.
Okay.
And also examples help me out a lot.
All right. So these are matches that you have on Ancestry.
Okay.
It needs to be a third cousin or closer. The closer, the better, obviously.
Okay.
And they need to have a tree.
Got it.
Therein lies the rub because the majority of people nowadays do not have trees on Ancestry.
Okay.
Your next thing that you need to do is to reach out to them and say, hey,
Make a
got
tree.
a tree?
Right. Okay.
Hey, can I see your tree? If they don't respond, do what I do and stalk them on social media.
That's Julie's
That's
opinions. Do
just
not
the way
endorse
to-
the opinions
no.
of the shows. Please do
Okay,
not
I
sue
don't
us. Thank you
stalk
very
them.
much.
I just happen to be a very good investigator.
You're great at being persistent,
Yes.
but in a good way, you usually have everybody's best interest in mind.
Yes,
so that
I
works
don't
out
do
nicely.
any mean, nasty things to people, and I'm very sensitive.
You are, yes. Okay, so you've got a third cousin. You need them to make a tree.
All right, so let's assume that they responded to you.
Okay.
And you say, hey, got a tree? And they say, why, no, I don't.
Okay.
One might think that the door is slammed shut there. However,
Yes.
you can ask them, can you give me your parents' names and your grandparents' names and maiden names and their approximate birth dates and locations, much in the way that you did with your tree, and
Right.
look at how far back we got.
Yeah, that was crazy.
With that tree.
Cool.
Right. So you can build a mirror tree just from that.
Cool.
So all is not lost as long as you have somebody willing to give you information.
Cool.
Okay, so you start building the tree on Ancestry by clicking trees.
Okay.
And then the drop-down menu will pop down and it says create and manage trees.
Great.
Click on that, mark the tree as private. So you add the home person
Okay.
and their parents. You'll keep going manually, copying their tree until you start getting the tree hints.
Okay.
That's the beauty. That's when the magic happens on Ancestry. Using those hints, if they seem somewhat feasible, you can start building the tree as far back and as wide as possible.
Cool. Okay.
Don't ignore the siblings of each grandparent or great-grandparent or great-great-grandparent. That's where all the
That's where the juice is.
Yes,
That's where the
exactly.
hints are.
That's
Okay.
where you're probably going to find the connections through the people that they marry, and then it goes down, and then you have more surnames to work with in your matches.
That makes sense.
Okay. When you've exhausted all of your hints, as well as your individual search options, because once they stop coming, you can also do, when you've added someone to the tree, if there are no hints, you can do search, and some hints may come up by manually searching for them.
Okay.
Add that tree to your Ancestry DNA results. In other words, go to your main DNA page, go to settings, and add that tree as your tree.
Cool.
And add you as the home person.
Yeah. Okay. That
So
makes
whoever that
perfect
match
sense.
was.
Okay.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And then walk away for a couple hours
Fun.
because Ancestry has to do its magic.
Sure.
Right. Then, once you start getting the shared ancestor hints are things we get only in the DNA matches because we match them by DNA, so they must be shared ancestors.
Right.
Does that
Okay.
make sense? You'll be able to ascertain which line from your original third cousin or closer match you are genetically connected. That is theoretically, assuming the trees are correct and there are enough trees
found all the
to
right
get
stuff.
this
Okay.
information from.
Right.
It works well for people with unknown parentage, but it also confirms more distant ancestors.
Yeah.
So it's not just for adopted people.
Right.
It's for genealogy. I recommend, if I'm doing somebody's family tree or genealogy, I insist that they do a DNA test because that's really how you can confirm things and knock down brick walls,
Cool.
what have you.
Yeah.
Okay. In my case, I've been able to confirm lines that by using traditional research could have been correct, but I did not get confirmation until I had distant DNA matches that are indeed connected to that line.
Cool.
And boom, I was right.
Yeah.
And I felt smug.
Of course you did.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you?
Yes.
Could you call it a smug tree instead of a mirror tree?
Smug tree.
If you wanted to? Okay. It's an option. That can be next week's word. Smug
Yes.
tree.
Smug tree. Love
Great
it.
job. No, you really helped me understand
Does that make sense?
It does. It
I
makes
hope so.
Perfect sense. I love it.
Thank you.
Great job.
We're going to take a break.
Thank you for listening to Cutoff Genes, the new podcast starring Julie Dixon Jackson with Renee Colvert.
It's that time of the show, everybody.
Renee's favorite time.
Renee's
Story
favorite time. You ready?
Yeah. Wait, where did we leave off?
Okay, when last we spoke,
Yes.
I was getting on a plane back to the U.S. after going to Australia to meet my biological mother and maternal biological family, and was there for 3 weeks, and it was overwhelming and exhausting, and I spent all my money, so had to go home.
Right. And there was a TV show offer that you were like, I can't.
Yeah, I didn't even do that. I was
Good.
like, yeah.
Good.
Probably if they'd offered me money, I might have stuck around
Oh, yeah.
so that I could afford to still be there.
Right,
but
of
no,
course.
they're like, no.
Okay. I got it. Okay, so you're on your way back.
I'm out of there.
All right.
I'm out of there. I get home. Mm-hmm. I'm done.
Yes.
I have accomplished what I wanted to, and I felt good, and it was time to get on with my life.
I love that. And it really felt like a door had closed.
At that time,
Yeah.
it felt like I'm done.
You solved the mystery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So life went on. I lived my life for another 10 years or so. Cool. Not really thinking. I would occasionally go back and pull out records and pictures, like the picture that my aunt had given me of my grandparents and my grandmother and some other strangers.
And what was the communication with your family over those years? Were you guys in touch pretty often?
We wrote letters. There was no internet, so there were Christmas and birthday cards and occasional phone calls, maybe once a year because it was expensive. There was no Skype back then.
Yeah.
So we kept in touch. It wasn't like it was a nice, courteous relationship.
Perfect.
Yeah. Getting to know each other.
That's kind of how it is with my extended family.
Sure.
Yeah. We say hi on Christmas. That's about it. Yeah.
Yep. Most people, I would say. So I still, in the back of my mind, I'd look at those pictures and I'd be like, so what's the story with him anyway?
Yeah.
And I would do occasional searches. Not until the internet really came around, however, was I able to go a little more into it.
Right.
But nothing ever happened.
Okay. Yeah.
So in 1998, I had my first child.
Right.
I had a daughter, and I was struck by the hormonal rush that you have and the overwhelming drive you have to never be away from them.
Yeah.
And do nothing but respond to their needs and nurture them every day.
Wow.
It was
It's involuntary, right?
absolutely, and you feel a little bit crazy, obviously because of the hormones, but you've never felt so protective of anything in your life.
Wow.
And you just want them to feel secure.
Wow.
And that kind of haunted me a little bit because I went back and I remembered that I'd been in the baby's home for the first 2 months of my life
Right.
by myself.
Yeah.
And I started to feel like who was there to nurture me?
Of course, yeah,
Who was there to
denied.
respond to my needs?
Was it difficult? Your kid's amazing. Lily, I love her so much. She's the best.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much. Was it, so I can't imagine because I know her. Did you ever have even a droplet of resentment of like, I'm going to take care of you, but nobody take care of me?
Yeah.
I would too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And not even that nobody took care of me, but just what did that do to me? It was very telling regarding the issues that I've had. I talked last week about how it's hard for me to let people inside my bubble and to see me be vulnerable.
Right. Yeah.
I believe that stems directly from that.
Of course it does. Yeah. Gosh,
You know,
it's crazy.
I really do. And, I'm sure there were nurses that were my caregiver, but it's just...
But they had to look after a lot of kiddos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how long did I have to wait sometimes? When my daughter would start crying or was hungry, I would go to her.
Right.
And I would hold her as long as she needed to be held.
Right.
But I probably learned the cry out method way earlier than most babies do.
I would bet. Yeah.
Oh, that makes me sad. Around that time, I started researching again about, just going back. And I think because I wanted to know, well, gosh, what was it like for me?
Yeah.
And I went... and there was now Google, my friend Google, and I did some research on the Methodist Babies Home, which, as I told you, was now the Copeland Street Family Center.
Right.
At this point, I think that had even closed and had become some apartments or an apartment complex.
All right.
But there was, in the Museum of Victoria or Melbourne or something like that, there are artifacts from this place. This place was actually very well known. I saw some old advertising leaflets or something for it that had pictures of babies, and it said Methodist Babies Home, making citizens out of, what was it? Making citizens out of slum babies.
No. No. Who signed off on that?
I don't know, but I think they took babies from a lot of the poorer areas.
So
and
my mouth is dropped open.
I know.
That's
it was
insane.
shocking. It was
Okay.
shocking.
All
for me.
right.
I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
There was also a sign. There was a metal sign that is in the museum that I took a picture of, and I actually have it on my website, on my
Your blog.
one of my pages, on my blog. And it said, and I think this picture popped up, and it said, visitors are requested to not touch the babies.
That's insane.
That gave me nightmares.
Of course it did.
It still gives me nightmares because
Yeah.
I'm thinking people were actually instructed to not touch me.
That's
And that's all babies
crazy
need.
making.
Yeah.
Now, again, I don't know very much about raising kids, so forgive me for this, and I know that there's a billion different theories, but the theory that you practice, when you're like, that was too early to learn sleep training, at what age should you learn sleep training? At what age should you not be touched by visitors?
You should never not be touched as far as I'm concerned. Because look, no, I mean, we certainly practiced what was called attachment parenting, which means responding to your child's every needs. Most mother-in-laws would tell you you're spoiling that baby.
Of course.
Please ignore those mothers-in-law. That is my opinion. Don't write letters. Anyway.
Well, but your kids are amazing. So. Okay. All right.
They would tell me, and my kids also slept with me in the bed.
Right.
One, because I nursed them both for a year and a half, and it was much easier to just roll over and nurse them than get up in the middle of the night and
go get them.
What have you. And I'm lazy.
You're clearly, Julie, you just told us that you researched for 3 hours a night. You were not lazy.
It's weird. It's weird how the disconnect, isn't it?
Yeah. You do what you're passionate about. Right. I get it.
So my babies, we had a family bed for quite a long time, and people would always say, they're never going to learn to sleep by themselves. Guess what? They both by 3 were sleeping by themselves.
Right.
NBD.
Yeah. Completely. Yeah. Do you think you chose that method because, or which came first? The way that you were parenting, or you started parenting that way and then got curious about the way that you were raised?
I parented the way that felt the most natural to me.
Yeah.
And the way that, in fact, for a while when people were telling me, you've got to get her out of the bed, I would put my daughter in the crib, and there was a monitor there so you could hear every move. I would lay there with my eyes wide open looking at the monitor waiting for her to make a sound.
Right. Yeah.
And I think I had an irrational fear of SIDS.
Of course. Well, because they scare you to death with that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and finally one day somebody said to me, do what feels right to you.
Yep.
And it was such a gift because life was just so much easier.
I love that.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I had an irrational fear of my Uncle Sid, but that was for a whole other reason.
Rich is going to edit this.
So you see this sign that's posted.
Yeah.
And it's
it
not
messed
like
with me.
Somebody wrote it on a piece of paper sign.
No, it was an actual printed up sign, like it was metallic.
Yeah.
That is an artifact that is on the museum's webpage or something from this place.
You just want to research, why?
Well, it's so, and again, as is said often in genealogy, it was a different time.
Yeah.
So I'm not really faulting anybody for it.
Right.
But the significance of it for me was remarkable.
Right.
Because it really hit close to home.
Of course it did.
So around the same time, I became astutely aware that, this kid has 50% of my DNA.
Right.
But I know at least my paternal line and I can research. But she also has 50% of my husband's DNA.
Right.
And she has a right to know his line too.
Yeah.
We know most of my husband's line. There is an NPE in there that I'll talk about another day. But that's a whole other story. Okay. Whole other can of worms.
Okay.
But anyway, and then I realized, my kids have a right to know my paternal lines as well because it's their paternal lines. So
that is so selfless of you to be like, I guess I don't care for me, but for my kids, let's get to the bottom of this.
Well, again, there are health issues. There are things that would be helpful to know.
Right.
I mean, when you're an adoptee, a lot of people that are not adoptees don't realize that when you go to the doctor's office every single time, they have you fill out a family history form or say, what is this? What runs in your family? Before I found my bio mom, I was like, I don't know.
No clue.
Yeah. And they just look at you like, okay, I guess we're going to guess.
Yeah. Right.
So that's a big deal. And when you at least have half of it. And there were things like with my mother, my maternal grandmother died very young of heart disease.
Huh.
So that's in the family. There was some mental health issues.
Right.
There were, my mother has late onset diabetes. Just different things that would be helpful to know.
Certainly.
What you're and I have an aunt who also died of cancer. So
of course, as somebody who is very prone to, here's what your destiny is. I never want to know any of it. And I almost like it as a placebo in the opposite direction. I'm just like, I don't know it. So I'm not susceptible to anything.
Ignorance is bliss is what we call that.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Okay. Yes, that's what that there's called.
Thank you for giving me that turn of phrase. All right.
For me, I like to know what I need to look for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know people who have Huntington's disease, which comes directly from your family line. I would have liked to know whether or not that was something I was prone to.
Sure.
I'm not, apparently, but
Well, good.
I never knew until
Yeah.
I found my people.
But that does, I think different people want different things. And if you want it, you deserve to know it.
Yep. So,
Yes.
at this time was when I was like, I think I need to find out who this guy is.
Right.
This sperm donor. Yeah. I'm going to say that. You know what I mean?
I do.
So I'd question my mother periodically about her about her members
About her
of her
members.
party.
Sure.
About her memories of my father. Sometimes they were a little different than they were before. Like she was remembering differently, and I would write it down and move on. But I could never come up
Okay.
with anything. And she would often tell me, it was so long ago, that's so hazy. It was such a, it was a weird time for
Yeah.
me.
Now, I don't know your mom, but I would imagine for me that would be a little bit traumatic to be put in that situation and then
Certainly.
be abandoned. My brain would be very quick to be like, yeah, we're not going to remember any of that. Let's go ahead and take that out for you.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that was necessarily the case with her, but it does sound on the borderline of trauma.
I don't know.
Right.
I believe being an adopted person in and of itself is trauma.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I would certainly agree that giving up a child would be trauma.
Yes,
I
exactly.
can't imagine.
Right.
So, So yeah, I would question her. She'd give me slightly altered names for his mother.
Okay.
And, here's the thing. She was close enough to him to have a child with him.
Right.
And she told me she had a relationship with him. They had dated. So she didn't know if he had siblings. And she didn't know his father. That was hard for me. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is she protecting somebody?
Yeah,
That-
you
I
would
thought
too.
that.
Well, and especially if you haven't experienced lack of memory, then you're just like, you're just
Yeah,
not
I
telling it
remember
to me.
everything. I remember what I was wearing my first day of school.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's an anomaly. I understand that.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we swung the pendulum a little
Yes,
too
a
far the
little
other
too
way.
far. Yes. Okay. So I started questioning my Aunt Val,
Okay.
who was the one who gave me the picture.
Right.
And she told me that she had known Arlene, my grandmother, for longer than my mother had. And she knew that family more. In fact, about a year before I was born, Arlene, my grandmother, had gone into the hospital thinking she had a stomach tumor.
Huh.
And Val went to visit her, and it turns out she had a baby.
Oh boy. Oh my God.
She had a
Those
surprise
stories
baby.
are mind blowing to me every time I hear it. I don't understand how that happens.
Right. So my aunt was there to talk her down and say everything will be okay. And look, you have this beautiful baby girl. What are we going to name her?
Right.
So my aunt helped my grandmother.
Your paternal grandmother.
My maternal aunt helped my maternal grandmother to name her daughter.
Crazy.
And it was Kim. And they came up with K-Y-M because she didn't want the traditional spelling.
Right.
So I now knew I had an aunt named K-Y-M.
Okay.
And that was another thing
Yep.
that I could put in my little...
There you go.
Yeah, yep.
In your tree.
Yep. So this was about 2007, and I had that piece of information, and I'd also recently joined Facebook,
Cool.
as you do.
Uh-huh.
And I routinely did searches for my elusive Campbell family, and I never found anything concrete.
Okay.
I joined Ancestry about that time and started building a tree using what I knew about my maternal line, using the Ancestry search tools. But the records from Australia are pretty minimal at that time.
Sure.
This is 11 years ago. But they did have the electoral rolls, which is...
Right. The census?
It's the closest thing to the census.
Okay.
In Australia, because there was no census in Australia. It is mandatory to vote in Australia, so everybody theoretically should be registered to vote.
Okay.
So that's where you find out where people were.
That's a good
Doesn't have
policy.
as much information as the census, but...
Got it.
Right.
But they can be found on a voting basis.
Correct.
Okay.
So most of the states' censuses were available
Okay.
on Ancestry, so I could peruse those. And I obviously focused on Victoria, which is where I was from.
Right.
The census had addresses and occupations and names, but nothing else. I did have addresses.
Yeah.
That I had from my identifying information.
Cool.
From those papers. So
Okay.
I at least had that to go on. Eventually, from the 60s, I found Arlene, And she was at some point at that address that Lynn had put for his address. So I'm like, okay,
Great.
she's there.
Yes.
Then I went back earlier and I found somebody named Lionel Campbell who was living with somebody named Arlene Campbell, and at a different address, and that was in the 50s, and I assumed that was probably my father's parents.
Right. Yeah.
But I didn't have anything concrete,
To
but I once
really
again tucked that
solidify it.
away as a wafer. Other than that, I couldn't find hide nor hair of them anywhere.
Yeah.
Very frustrating. I looked in the birth, deaths, and marriages. I would go to anyway,
Right.
couldn't find him.
No, that's frustrating.
Sure. So I would continue looking in first book, in Facebook,
Sure.
and Google. I would punch in his name and put Australia as a location, or
Right.
Victoria, what have you. And then I would expand it a little more for just all of Australia in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with a couple that had his name. There was one in Queensland that had red hair.
Ooh. Okay.
That was some kind of a scientist that worked for a university. And I thought, ooh, that could be him. He might be the right age. So I kind of kept that guy in the back. And I'm sure I wrote him an email, but never got anything back. But he was in my mind. I also found in Adelaide, which is in South Australia, a stand-up comedian named Mad Dog Malcolm Campbell.
Okay.
And I looked up some of his YouTube videos,
Yeah.
and he was not funny.
Okay.
But I enjoyed the thought that my
gonna
father could be a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, just when you
How fun is that?
said it without the information around, I'm like, oh yeah, that's absolutely
That must
your
be
dad.
him.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Especially when you said he was a bad one.
Ah, Rich. Zing.
He's back, everybody. Had to get one in, didn't ya? So yeah, he was not, and also he was way too young, so it wasn't him. So I went back and started questioning Lynn and Val again, because now I started thinking, okay, they made this guy up.
Right.
He doesn't exist.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe they're protecting somebody. Maybe there's a very deep, dark secret that would be devastating for the entire family,
Okay.
or very embarrassing, or But so I kind of prefaced it by saying, "Hey, I'm a big girl.
Yeah.
I don't care what happened. I
can handle it.
I can handle it. I feel I have a right to know.
Right.
Please, if you're protecting somebody, please just let me in on it. I won't write about it. I won't tell anybody about it. But I need to know.
Right.
Nothing."
Okay.
They were like, no,
That's
this
the
is all we
story.
know.
Yeah.
And they never backed down. And I was like, well, okay. So in 2012, Ancestry began DNA testing. And I waited because I knew they weren't testing in Australia yet. So
Smart.
at that point, as far as I knew, was 100% Australian. So
Right.
blah, blah. Finally did it in 2014.
Okay.
All right. So my ethnicity came back as almost at this time. I took the ethnicity, as a lot of people do, as very literal. So it said that I was almost 50% Irish.
Huh.
Later, I learned that that's not exactly what that means.
Okay.
Even though that's what
Sure.
it says.
I mean, you could deduce that that's
They've
what
changed
it was.
it. They've
based
changed
off
the settings a
verbatim
little bit.
What it said.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would make sense, wouldn't it? So, and I knew that my mother was not Irish, and there was one great grandmother that came from Ireland, but it wouldn't be 50%. And so I was like, oh, I'm Irish.
There we go.
So,
Wait, every time you tell the story, you say that you immediately dyed your hair red. Is that true?
I did. I dyed my hair red. I hate myself.
I love that detail so much. How soon after you seeing that you were Irish did you hop in?
Next day. I had been flirting with the idea of that. I've always loved that Irish red setter hair.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to embrace this.
Yes.
And I started reading books about Irish royalty and dyed my hair red and said, I am officially Irish, and lived with that for a few months.
Of course. I love it. I love her. I love every second of this.
How are things in Glockamora, Julie?
Wait, isn't that Scotland?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Glockamore is Scotland. What is
Oh, close.
Wah, wah.
It's close.
Fail. I feel victorious at this particular moment. All right. So anyway, that's what happened. And then I started looking at other people's trees that had the Campbell name and that had Irish ancestry.
Right.
Just randomly looking at that and then saying, hey, I didn't even know what I expected for them to be able to say to me, but
Sure.
I had to do something
Just
because
gotta-
if I'm not proactive, I'm dead.
Right.
So then one day I reached out to this one woman that was in Australia, and she had a very hashed out tree, and she had lots of people with that name or similar names from Ireland. And so I just, once again, wrote one of my standard emails, not thinking anything would come of it.
You start your emails with, I have rights. I deserve to know. You're just like, who is this?
I should have just like a form letter that I just like set in my email so that I can just push send.
Right.
Anyway, so I didn't think I would get anything. Well, the next day I get a response from her, and lo and behold, she says, well, I found this stuff, and among other things, and the most important thing was that she found the reference to my paternal grandparents' marriage.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's significant.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And because I'd given her the information that I thought was them, Lionel Campbell and Arlene Campbell.
Right, yeah.
And I had looked in the Victoria Births, Deaths, and Marriages, but you have to be apparently very specific the way you punch in the names, and it has to be exactly as they punched it in.
Okay.
And I could never come up with anything.
Sure.
She obviously knew the ropes better than I did and was able to come up with their marriage certificate from like 1942.
How'd that feel when she said she had that?
Nutty, because you know what? I now knew my grandmother's maiden name.
Yeah. That's nuts.
That's a game changer, everybody.
Yeah.
So, I all of a sudden, she said, my grandmother's maiden name was Brandt. Her name was Arlene Marie Brandt. And my world was about to change, and it was time to get a move on. And that is the end of this chapter.
Oh, so good. It's so good. I love it. I can't wait till next week.
So how are we feeling, guys?
Good. Excited for next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, want to hear more. I'm also excited for next week because next week you're going to be able to report what all you learned at the Jamboree.
I should probably take notes.
I think you'll be fine. You're
right.
pretty good at, you remember
You
what
want me to
you
do
wore
a
your
vlog?
first
Shall
day
I do
of
a
school.
vlog?
Yes, you should. You absolutely should. Yes, do that.
Okay.
100% do that.
Maybe.
Love it. And you should absolutely do a vlog, and you should post it on the Facebook group.
All right. Hey, Renee.
Yes.
How do people find you?
Sure. I am on Twitter at Renee Culver. I have a podcast called Can I Pet Your Dog if you like dogs.
And I am Richard Castle. I have a website as a songwriter at richardcastle.com, or you can follow me on Twitter or SoundCloud or on Facebook at Castle Songs.
Songs about castles.
And Julie, where can
He hates
everybody
me.
find you?
Everybody can find me on Twitter at Cutoff Jeans Pod. The Facebook page is Cutoff Jeans Podcast. You have to request to be a member just so that I know that you're not spam. And all you have to say is I love genealogy or Julie's awesome.
Or I'm a gnome.
Or I am a gnome.
Right. Good.
One way to get blocked is if your answer just says hot.
Huh.
Yeah.
Did somebody try that?
Yep.
Okay.
Block.
Okay.
That was
that's fair.
fun.
All right.
Should I have said cold?
Let Richard.
Lukewarm. Richard Castle for the win, everybody. Okay. All right. So we're out of here. I'm off to Jamboree. It's going to be a fun week. I have so much more to tell you. And the last thing I have to tell you at this particular moment is the truth is in your jeans.